I can't believe the dude still has balls to have a website up and still is taking records from, the major distributors and selling them on his website, because every other small band or label, he's just completely pissed on them and not paying them for records.
Welcome, everyone, to This Was The Scene, the podcast that takes a look back at the late 90s, early 2000 punk scene. I am your host, Mike Doyle. Before we begin, feel free to support the podcast if you've been listening for a while by signing up for my Patreon over at patreon.com/thiswasthescene. It's for $1 a month, and that would be great. Jumpstart Records was born in a college dorm room first as a paper mail-order catalog and zine that quickly evolved into a vinyl 7-inch release with Montreal's The Planet Smashers. 25 years and over 100 releases later, they're still here, for better or for worse, fighting the good fight. While the focus and drive of the label has shifted greatly over the years, one thing has stayed true: that's a personal connection with the music and a desire to work with their friends releasing music that they love. Times are tough, and being an independent record label in the year 2017, obviously they need to update this, isn't easy. Getting people to pay attention to a small record label run out of a suburban Philadelphia basement is no easy task. But they hope you enjoy what you can find as much as they enjoy introducing the world to bands and music they think people ought to know. They don't give a fuck what bands you've played with, who you recorded with, or how many followers you have on social media. If they like it, they like it. And there's not much else to say. It doesn't matter if it's punk, hardcore, ska, soul, hip-hop, or jazz. When the record needle hits, you know it when you hear it. Shout out to Adam Fowler of the Overdrives for this connection to Jeremy. Adam, you are a gentleman and a scholar. I appreciate the intro. After many failed attempts to get Jeremy on the Skype, I finally did it, and this is what we talked about. The Chimney Creek Brewery, what he's doing for the 25th anniversary, how do they stand out as a label, going on Warped Tour with Belvedere, his love of LWL, a Wilhelm scream, his thoughts on the Napster era, dealing with people, working with distributors, the shit that's going on with Interpunk, trying to release an Animal Chin record, I got your attention there, and a ton more. Go check out their website at jumpstartrecords.com to see what they're up to for the 25-year anniversary. 2 more ways to support the podcast. 1, you could donate one time on thiswasthescene.com. It's a purple button at the top of the website. Also, this is a side note, if you want to search for things, there's a search bar up there. So you can put in keywords like ska or Asian Man Records or like, I don't know, hot water music or things like that, and it'll bring you to those episodes. So that's a little tool there on the website that I don't think some people know about. And 2, you could buy merch on thiswasthescene.com. That helps to pay the bills. And that's it. Feel free to subscribe, leave a review, and share this with anyone who would love some punk rock nostalgia. With that said, let's get started. Is this is this your full-time thing, or are you balancing this with another career?
Jumpstart itself?
Yeah.
So Jumpstart's never actually been, at least the label itself has never been a full-time thing for me. I've always done something else. I mean, I guess you could say there was a short period of time. Well, not a short period of time. It was like 7-8 years where all I did was the label, but, really the main revenue or, income driver I had was running the screen printing shop. But the label itself has never been something I've done. I mean, I guess you could say in the 8 years where I was doing the print shop and the label, that was a full-time thing for me, but it's never been something that paid the bills, so to speak.
I'm so intrigued by this because I feel like there's a lot of labels out there that run it the same way. Like Rob Hitt, he has I Surrender Records with Alex and Gabby. The 3 of them run it, and I'm guessing there has to be some kind of income that the label does produce to I mean, in some aspect to kind of just sustain itself, right?
Yeah, obviously the goal is to not lose money on records and releases. There's certainly records that have done well. If I had 100 of those, it would be more than pay the bills. But those are few and far between. All of the 117 releases I've had come out in the last 25 years, I can honestly say there's been like 3 big records. I wouldn't say giant records, but obviously like ones that really garnered the bands and the label a lot of attention. But the rest of them, there's been, some records here and there that have done decently well. I mean, my goal has always been to break even. I'd love to see us break even and makes him whatever money would be made on records just gets put back into the label itself. But more times than not, I've lost so much money on the label over the last 25 years. And I mean, I guess part of it's not, it's hard to say that it's like losing money because some of it's not the label itself losing money on releases as much as it's this distributor screwing me over or this happening or that happening. I mean, the label's been going on for so long at this point that I could say there's been 4 distributors that have walked away with thousands of my money, thousands of my dollars that I'm never going to see. And I probably should have taken a clue from a long time ago that like I should have stopped doing this because it's been, in many regards financially a succubus, but it's sort of like it's my drug. It's a thing I love to do. And for better or worse, I've gotten pretty good at doing it. So I don't see any reason to stop.
I was thinking about it the other day because I have 3 things that I do. One of them, my main source of income, is I do animations for a living. I've been doing that for as an LLC since 2011. So I'm literally coming up to 10 years doing it. Actually, I think this week might be exactly 10 years since I did the LLC. And then I have this, and I have this webcomic that I do. And the other day, I got like a check for $6 for a book that I sold in a local store, and I was so happy. But then if I did the math on what I spent for all of the books, and then I get these stickers because Sticker Mule has been doing this really, really crazy deals lately on stickers and things.
I'm addicted to that website. It seems like every time they put up a special, I'm always getting something.
I I don't know if they've always done that. I've just paid attention to it since March, and because I felt like it was their way to stay in front of people, and it's brilliant. I thought they were gonna stop, but they keep fucking doing it, so I just keep ordering all this shit, and I'm surrounded by it right now, and I almost feel as if I'm a record label where I'm in a different aspect, where it's like I'm treating this like if I'm making releases for myself and I'm just burning money. It's not like a ton of money, but it's like I get like a small sense of what you guys, like record labels who do this as a passion project, go through. And it's like I know I'm spending money, and I know that the amount I'm spending versus the amount I'm making is so small, but I love doing it, so I don't care. And so I feel like that must kind of feel the same way, even though you talked about how distributors and shit like that have fucked you, which is totally different because that's where thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of dollars are being spent. So obviously it's a big different for me spending $20 on stickers from Sticker Mule and losing that than $10,000 or whatever the fuck it is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess part of it too is, I've gotten, as the years have gone by, I've gotten better at when I first started. I don't want to say, to me, it was like, well, fuck it, this is punk rock. I'm not going to make any money anyway. There's a large part of it's like, I just want to get the music out. I'm not worried about making the money back. That's a really naive thing to do when you're younger. And now I look at it more so where I'm trying to at least get the money back that I put into the records, which a lot of times, now it's like I'm actually looking at it like, well, if I sell 160 records at this, or I sell 200 records at this, or I sell 300 records at this, that's my break even point. Everything after that's gravy. The last year in particular with COVID it's been easier to a certain regard because there's more people that are in front of you. Before COVID, there's just not as many people in front of their, or there's people just weren't in front of their screen as much, even though they are more so than in the past. But there's so many different forms and ways of diverting people's attention. And I feel like now it's been music because they can't go see bands live. They're paying a lot more attention to it online. And I mean, I've done more mail order in the last year than I probably did in the last decade. So
Wow.
in that regard, it's been nice. And then I've had a little bit more of I don't want to say renewed interest because I've always wanted to continue to do this, but I've had more time because, a few things have changed in my life as far as like what I'm doing, professionally as a brewer. So I've been able to spend some more time. I mean, I was just happy to be able to, like, for the first time in almost a decade, clean my office, which is just the basement of my house. It's a 1,000 square foot basement, but it's just really since the brewery started, I hadn't paid enough attention to even, well, it's not even that I wasn't paying attention. I didn't have enough time to spend like a day or two just to clean everything up. And going through that was like kind of crazy because I found a bunch of records that either, are out of press or like, oh, hey, I found 3 copies of a Wilhelm Scream Career Suicide first pressing. Like they were hidden between this stack or that stack, or like a few other releases that as soon as I put them up online, boom, they were gone. And I even went through like a boatload of the test pressings I had and did like a test pressing mystery box. People were into that. And then I did, just by organizing my shit, went through and I was like, okay, well, it'd be nice to move some of these records. So I did just a random record mystery box that like people, I don't want to say freaked out about, but like I sold like 100 of those. And there it just kind of like, started snowballing, like more and more people paying attention. And I was, part of it had to do is I was able to spend some more time on the label in the last year because I wasn't at the brewery 7 days a week
Yeah.
doing that. So, I mean, it's been nice and refreshing to do that. This being the 25th anniversary of the label, like I'm pretty excited because that kind of coincided with me getting my crap together to try to celebrate that. I'm already like almost 2 months behind on some of that, but I'm going to make a couple announcements soon about, some limited releases and some stuff I found in the office and, some fun projects that we're working on right now.
Actually, real quick, just because you keep talking about your brewery, like just tell people real quick about the brewery, just because you got their attention. It's you get right now.
It'll be 10 years ago. Actually, it's 11 years technically since the start of it in the sense of like planning and everything like that. Or like if you could say when we filed the paperwork for the tax ID was June 1st, 2010. But I'm one of the founders and the former head brewer from the Chamonix Creek Brewing in Croydon, Pennsylvania. Started it with two partners, Rob and Steve, and we officially did all the paperwork to start the business in June of 2010, but it wasn't until June of 2012 that the brewery actually opened. Back then, there wasn't online licensing portals to do your license for the TTB and the LCB in the state of Pennsylvania. So we had to do the paper application. So it took some time, and then all the other things involved, the build out of the brewery as well. So we didn't open for 2 years. Fast forward to here we are 9 years since that. Like I stepped down as the head brewer and one of the operating managers at the end of September 2019. Was originally going to take a break because I was pretty fried, pretty burnt out. The brewery went from like a small 3-person operation to 80 plus employees, 2 locations, just burning the candle at both ends, so to speak. And big difference between when the brewery started and where the brewery was at when I stepped down was I wasn't married when the brewery started. I didn't have any kids, so I was able to dedicate 16 hours a day if needed or 7 days a week, which was pretty much all the time. And by the time we got to 2019 with my 2 daughters and everything in the brewery, I just was pretty fried. Decided to take a step back and a break from that. Stepped down as an operating manager and as a head brewer. Really intended to take like 3 or 4 months off to get my shit together. One of those things actually was to spend like a week just cleaning the Jumpstart office, cleaning my basement because it was just, it looked like a bomb had gone off. Over the course of 10 years, I hadn't really done a whole lot to keep things organized, or I had just junk everywhere, label junk everywhere. And then I want to say quickly, I was like, kind of like said to myself, well, I guess I got to find a job, I'll start working on that now because, I'm going to take 3-4 months off and I don't want to start looking for a job in 4 months when I really probably need to get back to work. So I just started sending out resumes and I actually ended up getting a job really quickly. I got an offer that worked out really well for me. I was took a position as a head distiller at a small craft distillery in New Jersey called Sourland Mountains in Hopewell, New Jersey. Didn't really intend to get back or jump back into things really quickly, but it just, offer came along. The schedule and the pace of a distillery is very different than a brewery. So it worked out really well for where I was or where I thought I needed to be, and took the last 16 months doing that. And then, as life would have it, in the middle of a global pandemic, I had a group from Germany reach out to me that was looking for an American brewer to lead a brewery project, a build-out project, expansion project here for a brewery, really, I guess a once in a lifetime, project, especially on the brewing side. I mean, you could say that just because it's in Germany, but, really to be out in front of a project this size, there's no way I thought I would ever. The Chamonix was a pretty big once in a lifetime. I'm super proud of all the work and things that we did, but this is the size and scale of this is crazy. I never thought I would ever have an opportunity like this. So here I find myself now actually talking to you from Neunkirchen, Germany. And for the next 18 to 22-ish, 24 months, 2 years, I'm going to be splitting my time between Germany and the States, traveling back and forth, doing anywhere between 3 to 5 week stints at home or here working on this project. But I'm pretty excited about it because it's definitely, as a brewer, a lot of people, I think Germany's brewing history and tradition and culture obviously precedes itself. And to be able to be, one, here because of that is pretty awesome. And two, just the fact that these people I got super lucky that they even found me in the first place. Um, so like to have that opportunity, it's in some ways, and I kind of look at it like, what idiot takes a position that requires international travel in the middle of a global pandemic? But it was certainly a situation where like I had to take it, pandemic or not, I had to figure out, what I could do or how I had to do it to take on this project. So, and, luckily my wife has been really cool with it. My kids have been great. And, we live in a time and age where, I talk to my kids 2 or 3 times a day via FaceTime. So it's not like they never see me or talk to me, and whatnot. So we're pretty lucky in that regard.
Well, cool, man. Well, let's kind of jump back in here because I want to make sure that I can give you enough time to talk about the label and all that. But you guys, so you started this in '96, and you're going on your 25-year reunion this year, or reunion, Christ. I think every time like a band gets together, you're doing 25 years of the label this year. Like
Yep. It feels like a reunion a lot of the time. Trust me, when I run into a lot of people I worked with, it certainly feels like a reunion.
you started this in Pennsylvania,
Yep.
right? So like talk about how the label came about, like back then, like were you going to shows and like started seeing bands play and go like, oh man, like I want to get involved and I want to do it this way through a label, or did you like, yeah, how did that all start?
I mean, I was going to shows as a kid. My home base. I was lucky enough to be able to see a lot of shows at City Gardens in Trenton, New Jersey. As a kid, I don't want to say it was cut short for me, but like I spent 2 years in high school in New Jersey and 2 years in high school in Ohio, so I didn't get the full high school experience of being able to go to shows all the time as a teenager. City Gardens, but I definitely saw my fair share of awesome shows there. I mean, my senior year in high school, there was some weeks I was there for 2 or 3 shows a week. I was super fortunate to live, only a half hour from there. So you had your pick of the show. And especially in 1994, having graduated high school in 1994, I had a crazy opportunity to see all these bands right before they broke. I saw Offspring open up for Pennywise at City Gardens, before Smash hit, before they became this ginormous band. I actually turned down the opportunity to see Rancid in 1993 at City Gardens just because I actually went on a college tour. I went to visit Penn State, to check out Penn State before I actually ended up going to Penn State. But I, decided not to go see Rancid because I was going to, on a college visit. So, yeah, I was super lucky to be able to see, all those bands, not only at City Gardens, but also when I was living in Columbus, Ohio, just outside of Columbus, Ohio, I was able to see a lot of, really rad bands in Columbus as well and whatnot. So I was always really into really heavy music. I was lucky that I had an older sister that, really turned me on to punk. Really, she was more into new wave and stuff like that. But for me, it really led to a lot of punk. And then in junior high and high school, got super involved in skateboarding and really was into a lot of thrash metal, which really led me to a lot of faster hardcore and whatnot. Fast forward to college, started writing a zine, doing all that. Went to Penn State, started in State College at Penn State in 1994. Met some other like-minded friends, dudes that lived in my dorm. Was really into going to shows. At the time, State College had a decent scene. There was a few people that were definitely bringing in some cooler bands, as well as groups on campus that that brought some bands to State College and on campus. So started off with the zine, and then my roommate my sophomore year, we got along really well. We were actually doing a radio show together, campus radio at Penn State, and then one thing led to another. It was like, hey, let's put out a record. Let's talk to some bands. What can we do to start a record label? What do we have to do? And actually ended up, one of my favorite bands to this day. And, but at the time was certainly the Bouncing Souls. I was super, lucky at the time where you could just before the internet and email, and well, it was like just as email was starting to become more popular. I remember I had written a bunch of letters to Brian, the bass player, just asking like, hey man, love your band. You guys put out your own records. Where do you guys press your records? What do I have to do to press a record? This, that, and everything else. And, he was always super rad and super cool about responding and really gracious with his time, always responds in a letter. And I actually still have all the letters, which is hilarious. But, told me where to get my records pressed. So I started looking into it more and more. This is before we had the internet, websites and whatnot, before people could just look up a record pressing plan on the internet, on the World Wide Web. So, I had to get information from United down in Nashville. I sent the record off the press. The first record ever was the Planet Smashers, a ska band from Montreal, Canada. Super into ska, still am. I gravitate maybe at certain times of the year, so to speak, towards how my mood's feeling. But like, for me, being a little bit older, it was always super common to see ska bands with punk bands and hardcore bands, and it wasn't as segmented as it is today. So like the intention, I don't know if I want to say it wasn't to put out mainly ska, but I always wanted to do more than just that anyway. So yeah, the first record came out in November of '96 with the Plant Smashers from Montreal, and then definitely the first like few releases were heavy ska focused. Like the first release was the Planet Smashers, second was a compilation, third was the B3s, a ska band out of Pittsburgh.
Wait, so real quick, just because I'm on your website. So basically, if you go to releases on jumpstartrecords.com, everything from the bottom up is in chronological order of when it was released?
Yep, 100%.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, because you're talking about this, and I'm just like following this whole thing right here.
Yeah, for a long time I didn't have the artwork on the website just because some of the artwork I didn't have enough or like high quality versions of the artwork. They were on like old zip disk.
Oh,
100
wow.
zip disk, and I didn't have a computer that would even like read the hard drive, the zip drives anymore. And then the one zip drive I had wouldn't even open or read the disk anymore. So luckily, I've been able to find some stuff here and there. There's a few pieces of artwork, like the one record I just don't have a good high res version of is the Kingpin 7-inch and whatnot. And then I've been lucky that the rest of the stuff there was probably like around release 10 is when the artwork started getting much better and didn't look so amateurish. I mean, there's a few releases in the first couple that were okay. There was a few that like, I don't want to say I look back on and I regret, but you kind of look at it and you're like, ooh, that's a rough looking piece of artwork.
I was going to ask you about that because I do graphic design. I mean, I started off my career as a graphic designer, and then that's just progressed into doing just animation now because I got so fucking sick of designing shit for people. Like someone asked me to do a logo the other day, and I was like, no, I was like, I'll charge you at least $1,000 to start, just to show you that I don't want to do this. But like, but I do design work for myself, and I learned when I got into it. This is when Illustrator and Photoshop had been around for a really long time, and it was better. And I for my band when we were putting together our artwork, we're over the shouldering this guy as he's designing this stuff, and it was so foreign to me. But now it's like I'm so used to it. But like looking at the artwork here, like what were you guys using? Do you remember like to design
Yeah.
all these covers?
So the first couple of releases, like the first release was actually in Quark Express. I think it was
Oh
like
wow.
version 2 or 3.
Yeah.
It was the early version of Quark Express. This is when page layout and graphic design programs were still relatively young. I mean, so the main stuff, graphic work was done in Photoshop, but the layouts were being done in Quark Express. I can't even remember when I want to say I graduated onto using like Adobe Illustrator, which to me was like life changing. Discovering vector based graphics to me was like mind blowing.
Oh God, yeah.
So, and I was really lucky that like at the beginning, relatively early on, I worked with a few graphic designers that were a million times more proficient and better at it than me. One of them being a good friend of mine, Jamie Bogner, who at the time was writing a zine called Scatastrophe, and right now is like the chief content editor for a big craft beer and brewing magazine called Craft Beer and Brewing. But Jamie actually developed not the original or the first Jumpstart logo, but certainly I want to say from release like 12 on, what you see as the modern Jumpstart logo with the pliers and everything. That Jamie Bogner did that, and I've been using it ever since. But like Jamie was responsible for like the Virgin City record, the Dr. Echo record. Oh, there's another one in there too. I can't remember, but Jamie was a huge help. I super admired the work and he was doing with Catastrophe, and his design and layout for that was just at the time, for 1995, 96 was just, I think Catastrophe was 96 through 98, 99. Like, at the time it was just like, you could just tell that he was on another level and like super professional, super clean, and Jamie's been in publishing ever since. So it makes sense. From there, I just started working with much better graphic designers and myself getting more proficient. I was super lucky to be able to work with people like Ken Adams, who was really well known at the time for doing all the early Victory style comps.
Oh yeah.
He did a couple of samplers, like label samplers for me, and then did the artwork for the No on 15 Meet the Lads LP.
Was he the guy? Is he the guy that did? Because I'm just looking just visually. Did he do the Virgin City, or the Jumpstart Records one with Two Sugar Sampler?
He did Two Sugar Sampler. Actually, the artwork for Virgin City, The artwork itself was done by Ons from the band Scooby and the Epitones, but Jamie Bogner had done the layout for that record. But yeah, Ken did the artwork for the two Sugar samplers. He did the artwork for the Code EP. He did the No on 15 CD. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head if he what else he's done. I actually have to look at it.
Yeah, because you can kind of see where it stands out because it went from, like the first release is a tire with just the text going around a circle, where I remember when I started designing, I was like, oh, I can type text on shapes. And you could see where it starts to progress, where you're like, all right, there's so many things we could do. But as you're scrolling up, all of a sudden his artwork for jumps, for the two Sugar sampler just totally pops out because it's just really well designed, and just the drawing is so fucking cool.
Yeah, the crazy thing about that too is like I always laugh about the first record is it's listed incorrectly, like on the Discogs website as Inflate the 45 RPM 7-inch or whatnot, or single, but it really was the 80 bus. That was actually what we sold it at. Is just the graphic designer was a friend of the band who had done it. I guess the wheel and everything, it makes sense because the first the A side on that's called the 80 bus, so it's just a picture of a wheel on a bus. But everyone, it's listed incorrectly in a lot of places as like Inflate the 45 RPM like 7-inch, and that's not true. That the actual name is the 80 bus. And it's kind of funny, like even the label goes so far back that like the B3's Only Human Never Go Away 7-inch, getting 7-inch inserts and jackets or whatever printed back in the day was pretty hard. And that one in particular was printed by Punks with Presses, which was a print shop out of like the East Bay. So I one of the few places where you could work with someone that understood what you were trying to do. Like here's this crappy little ska punk rock label, and I'm looking for printing for a 7-inch, and okay, well, here's your choices, one or two colors. This is what we do, type stuff. So
what was like your criteria when you were signing? Like, what did you offer them when you signed like your first 10 releases? Like what did you present them with?
So, I mean, at the time, there weren't a ton of labels. There certainly weren't as many labels as there are now. And access availability to anyone putting out records. I mean, shit, if you knew how to do it, that would be a major hurdle. Because at the time, again, it's not like you could jump on the internet and like type in vinyl record pressing or CD pressing. That was half the battle or part of the hurdle. So for us, it was like, hey, we'll put out your record and we'll give you free copies. And after that, we'll charge you only cost on the free copy or on the copies. So it was like they got X amount for free, then the rest they got for whatever it cost you to press it. I don't want to say it was a bad thing because I think that's great. It's super helpful to the bands, and that was the whole point. But then, from a financial standpoint, we were certainly selling a lot more copies through the band. So at the end of the day, we spent all this money to press the record, and maybe we did some, advertisements, did some ads and zines, and did this and that, and did that. Maybe help the band out with posters and other things. And like, we really weren't making any money because we were selling the majority of the copies to the band at cost.
This is like the time where we were selling our CDs for like $10, right? Or like $7-10.
Yeah. I mean, well, I'd say like, when CDs first came out, they were like $15-18, and we were selling, CDs for $10, which made sense because at the time CDs were probably being pressed, I'd say between $3 and $4.50. Now they're like $1.80, and people are still charging $10. It hasn't changed much.
But when you sold them, it costs like, if you got 1,000 pressed, or what was like the minimum amount that you would, or the maximum amount of pressing you would do when you first started pressing CDs?
So for 7-inches, it was definitely 500. CDs were always 1,000. It was super, I don't want to say easy, but like CDs were king. So getting through, going through 1,000 CDs wasn't really that difficult. The first band that really for us that like blew through 1,000 CDs was Belvedere. That Angels Live in My Town record, like that was like the first record for us that was like boom, boom, boom. Although the Midnight Radio comp did pretty well too, but like, yeah, really like the first record that people like really took notice of or like felt like had some momentum under it was like the Belvedere Angels Live in My Town record. But 1,000 CDs, it was like, we had a mailing list. By the time we got to an emailing list of like 2,000-3,000 people, you'd send an email out and you'd go through 500 records really quickly because that was the main source. This is before Napster and digital and whatnot. So that's the way people found music. That's the way people got music.
Yeah. So you did your first comp. How many releases in was this? Was not the second one?
It was technically the second release. It's the
Midnight Radio?
Yeah. The catalog number was number 3, but it was technically the second release. JST-002 has never come out. And there's in the 117 releases, in the last 25 years, there's some gaps, which is part of like what I'm trying to do this year is to release some things that were never released for one reason or another. JST-002 is one of them. If it doesn't happen this year, I'm not worried about it because I have the material to do it. Actually, finding the material was part of the problem, but I have the material now. So that's part of like what I'm trying to do for this year is to you kind of revisit a few projects that for one reason or another didn't come out in the last 25 years and finally get them out to the world, as well as press a few things on vinyl that never saw vinyl, things like that.
How much of a pain in the fucking dick was it to get bands for your first to doing that comp? Because even now I'm just coordinating with that many bands must have been just a pain in the ass.
It was, but one thing that was super helpful back then is that if you asked one band, they always knew two or three other bands, that were like, hey man, you should really ask these guys, to be on this comp. I think you dig them. It's sort of a snowballing effect in that regard. That was super helpful, but it's not nearly as easy as these days to communicate with bands. I mean, this is, again, I think Midnight Radio at the time, we were certainly starting to communicate a lot via email. And then the other thing was really through IRC chat channels. So I met so many people in bands that were on IRC. Do you know what IRC is?
No. What is that?
It's Internet Relay Channel. So that's the chat groups, Reddit chat groups. Yeah, before there were Reddit groups, there was just Internet Relay Channels, which was sort of like an online forum, but just a chat channel. And they usually had themes, alt.punk.music or whatever. And you just go on and, there's people on these things 24 hours a day. Back when Napster really took off, if you wanted to get stuff off of Napster, people were uploading and then posting the links in the IRC channels for you to click on and download. So like tons of file sharing going on, tons of the ability to communicate with other people in the scene, in other bands, other labels, other fans, stuff like that, people that are just into the music. That became a vehicle and a way for us to communicate and do this stuff. And then eventually that just really turned, and as the internet's developed and evolved, now it's you have a million bands posting their stuff up on SoundCloud or Bandcamp. It's super easy to find bands.
I almost think like it kind of worked in your favor. This is just maybe me guessing, but I think it worked in your favor back then that you had a limited amount of things that were online, because I know when you have too many places to post, like if you were gonna advertise your label, your bands, even today, the easiest thing is to go on Facebook and post it and create a page, do an Instagram account, do Twitter, and have a Bandcamp. It's kind of like your home base. But then, where do you go to tell people about this shit? So then you have the Reddits and all these places where it's like it almost becomes a bit daunting on how the fuck where do you go, and then are you yelled at for posting about it? So it's like I gotta feel back in the day it almost worked in your favor because it was limited. So and it was like I feel it was more welcomed to talk about the releases.
I mean, definitely in the sense that, if you had an emailing list and collecting emails at shows or, through people picking up stuff through mail order or going to your website and signing up your email list, I feel like there was certainly more of a direct link and people paid more attention when you sent an email. Now, like people get an email from a label and it's easy to just swipe and delete it or cruise by it. The amount of information that you're just bombarded with these days, whether it's, your email, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff, it's really hard to capture people's attention. Like I was saying earlier, I think it's been a little bit easier with COVID because there's been more people that have extra time in front of these screens, whereas before it was like, well, I have 15 minutes. I'm just going to screw around on Twitter. It's sort of like the Tinder effect. It's like, they're swiping right or left really, really quickly just to go and breezing through things, but they're not actually like engaged or involved. Whereas in the past, you sent out an email, people were much more engaged. Like they came out to shows more because of, that direct communication and that direct link. So to a certain degree, yeah. And then the other side of it too is like, because there wasn't as much exposure or, the ability for bands to record a song on your laptop and post it up on SoundCloud later that night, there wasn't as many bands. I mean, maybe there were, but we didn't know about them because they just didn't have that presence. Whereas now, it's sort of like breweries, man. They're a dime a dozen.
Yeah. Yeah, but the thing is though, man, like I think the email thing you're talking about, it's true that it is hard to get people's attention when they don't know of you. But I almost think that I give my attention to all the things that I care about. If I sign up for something in email, if I go out of my way to do it because I think I'm going to get value from it, I'll pay attention to it. And if it's the right thing, I will buy it because if it's something I like, and then if it's something put in front of me that I want, I'm gonna buy it. I think the argument now about people are like afraid to do certain ways to like market themselves in a certain way, or use email. I think email is the best, absolute best way to market, because your people are welcoming you into their home, and if they unsubscribe, it's like they're doing you a favor, because then they weren't going to buy anyway. But you're gonna they're interested, and I think they're going to give that a little bit more time now. Not like I'm going to stick on marketing this whole time in present day, but
Well, no, I mean you're 100% right, and I think part of that is things have kind of come full circle when it comes to like direct communication or engagement with people that care about what you're doing. I mean, people certainly pick their lanes. Some people just only care about Twitter. Some people only care about Facebook. Some people only care about Instagram, and that's the same as email. I mean, it's for me, I certainly enjoy. I like email a lot more. I feel like I can say more. People that are going to read it are going to care more. So I mean, I prefer that. Like, I'm 46 years old, so at the point now where like, it's not that I don't understand some of these social media channels, but I just I don't have time for maintaining a Twitter account, an IG account, and a Facebook account. And then like, I'm certainly not going to sign up for TikTok, man. Nobody wants to see my ass on TikTok. Like no one's going to follow me. I'm not going to contribute anything to society on TikTok. Not that it does anyway, but
that made me think of something from back then, right? Because you had how creative did you get in the beginning of your releases? Because we didn't have all this stuff. We didn't have the Instagrams and things, but it's what I like is, look, I talked to Hopeless. I talked to Lewis from Hopeless, and he was really smart where he goes, we had so many comps on the shelves that we had to figure out how to stand out. So we did tinfoil wrapping for the comps, and we noticed that we had an uptick in sales because it like immediately caught someone's eye. So did you in the first, I keep going back to the first and 10 or 20 releases because that's like the first couple of years of this whole thing. Did you start to figure out how you could release things and make an experience out of it for people? And like, all right, cool, we did this. Oh, if you do this, then we're gonna do a shirt that's limited to go with this, or stickers, or something like that.
we certainly try to do a few things like that. Like one from a mail order perspective, like if you bought direct from us, we were always trying to include cool stuff like the label samplers, which always included some extra bands that weren't on the label that we really liked or that we were friends with. And then on top of that, we were trying to do a few other things. Like for example, like the Fonzie record, there was a whole multimedia track on that where you could not download, but watch video. There was a few videos from the band on it and stuff like that. That was the first time we had ever done anything besides just music itself on the CD. I'd say the most advanced marketing or like thing we had ever done was like you get the spine stickers across the top that have the band's name and maybe a logo on it. Like that was like the most complex thing we ever did as far as a visual presentation, of the release on the release itself. Maybe there was a few that had a couple stickers on it. We didn't get too crazy with it. Yeah, I mean, for us, it was mainly our stuff was focused on selling as much as we could through the bands and whatnot, and the bands, what they were doing on the road. Because at the time, that was the main driving force anyways, was bands playing shows and bands touring.
Did you ever find there was a certain band that you had that like because you started in 96, so, and then you obviously, you've been doing this for so long. So I'm trying to think of like that late 90s time period to kind of go with the theme of the podcast. Did you find there was a certain band from that era that just went above and beyond, or they got really creative with promoting themselves and helping the label sell more releases, like of their releases?
I mean, this is a time when being, creative or going up above and beyond was just touring your ass off. Like you being on the road 250 days a year. And I mean, the bands that were doing that were like Belvedere. Belvedere was a bunch of road warriors, man. They lived on the road. Even before Angels Live in My Time came out, like they were constantly on the road in the States and Canada. And then when Twas Hell Said Former Child came out, they did their first tour of Europe. They were just constantly on the road. And that's really how your band got known. We didn't have many other vehicles past that. Wilhelm Scream was the same way. They had really done a lot of touring themselves, so that when Benefits of Thinking Out Loud came out, they were already getting a lot of attention because of how much they were on the road. I mean, obviously, at least, my bias is they were an incredible band too, or are an incredible band. So like that helped. But yeah, I mean, most of it was all touring. It wasn't until like the MySpace age, really like the early 2000s, early 2000, mid 2000s, where you started to see a shift where your online presence made, as much, if not more of a big deal. It was more important to have that direct, link and engagement with people following your band. That's really when I'd say like 2003, 4, 5 is when that took over. And it was less about touring, although it was still touring band's thing, but like you could start to generate interest with your band without even leaving your house.
Yeah. Yeah, you could just get creative with your page, and then it just became a disaster because everyone just used these sparkly gifs and shit. It was so bad.
And on top of that, we started, because of this link now, just more people knowing about the label, we started getting more demos from bands, more bands hitting us up saying like, hey man, I dig your bands. Here's our MySpace page. Check it out. We just put up a new song type stuff. So there's two sides to that street. It was definitely helpful in that regards, but then sometimes it became more difficult to figure out a path. So, I mean, I don't want to say we did anything right. I mean, there's certain things we did right. There's certain things we didn't do at all. For me, again, it was we just try to do as much as we can with the limited resources we had for the bands that we were super passionate about and working with.
So I think Josh and Adam will kill me if I don't ask you how you got hooked up with the overdrives.
I'm fairly certain, and my memory is pretty shit. Adam would probably be better at this than me, but I feel like I'm almost certain that the connection came. So I was in No 115, playing shows in No 115 with the overdrives is how I met those guys and how I got to know them. And from there, that's really where that relationship came from.
And it's funny because you're still friends with them. I mean, you're still friends with Adam to this day because Adam worked at Nishimni.
Yeah. He texted me yesterday. I sent him. I was kind of like going through some old pictures, and I sent him pictures. Him and I were in yesterday from Germany actually. So yeah, Adam and I talk fairly frequently. There might be something brewing with the overdrives this year. If we can, keep some this head of steam and some energy behind a few ideas. But no, man, I love that band. I always got along with those guys and whatnot too. So that was a good relationship as well.
Yeah, Josh like literally will text me every couple episodes that come out. He'll either correct me or he'll just say like, "Oh, that was cool," and he'll send me a link to something we talked about. And so it's been kind of cool because of this. Like me and him didn't. We really just became friends because of this podcast, but he's a super awesome guy.
Yeah, I love Adam, man. I miss working with him, but maybe sometime in the future again.
So okay, so like the label starts off, you're putting out releases, and then I mean this is like because you're doing it. You started right at the peak of the scene that I was in, where that's where I think there was that shift that started to blow up at the pop punk scene because of Green Day had already blown up a couple years prior. Rancid coming out, Offspring. It just opens this door to the MTV crowd. So there's this, and then Warped Tour is big. So then that becomes huge. So you're coming out in this time, and then like, did you kind of feel? I don't know. Did you like notice at that time that was you kind of like lucked out at starting a label around that time period?
I mean, yeah, to a certain degree. I mean, I'd say, for example, like we had done. 2001, we did 10 days on Warped Tour with Belvedere because Belvedere got 10 days. So we set up a tent with them, and we were selling label samplers for $1. I mean, we went through 2,000 copies of that label sampler in 10 days. And then the next year, Wilhelm Scream was on. So I want to say they got 14 days, 15 days. But we decided to do essentially the whole tour. We started in San Francisco, so I think we missed like the 2 LA shows, and maybe I think it might have started in Phoenix that year. I can't remember, but I do remember we missed the 2 LA shows. But then we started with the 2 San Francisco shows and did every show for the rest of the tour, and I think we ended up selling like 4,000 or 5,000 copies of the label sampler. So it was a no-brainer. It was $1. It wasn't hard to sell, and the label was certainly picking up some interest in people. This is also a time where you could put a website address on a release, and people would then actually go to the website to check it out. So that was, super helpful and some exposure for the label and people starting to pay attention. Right around that time, not just after the second Warped Tour date or summer Warped Tour dates, I moved from State College to Philadelphia, where I moved the print shop and the label. And this is actually this is the start of the period where all I did was the print shop and the record label.
What was this time period again?
2003. Is when I moved to Philly. And, from that point on, like you see kind of like I don't want to say a transition, but you'll see, there starts to be a lot more local bands are, you have Jenner Berlin that comes in, and then Giving Chase, who I ended up playing bass for. I wasn't on the first Giving Chase record on Jumpstart, but, they actually, I knew the guys from State College and Penn State. They moved to Philly, needed a bass player. I said, yeah, if you're cool with it, I'd love to play with you guys. So you have bands like Jenner Berlin, who's local. You have Giving Chase, who moves to Philly. Then you have One One Choice from South Jersey. Lighten Up is from Philly, so then Metroplex is from Philly. So you have a bunch of local stuff going on in addition to some other bands. Like we had released a record with a band from Austria called Ospi that I was like super into, and then a Dutch band called Intellectual. So yeah, we are certainly keeping busy. I kind of skipped over, breezed over Westgate as well. So there was another Philly band, and then Jettison as well. I was like super into LWL. So
yeah, I saw that. I didn't realize that you had put that record out.
Yeah, I mean, I would have loved to have put out an LWL record too, because not that the Jettison record I loved as well, but I was a huge LWL fan, so that's I think I'd reached out to him prior for a comp, and I mean, No 115 had played a show or two with LWL, and then when they broke up and started Jettison, that's really where that relationship started too. So
yeah, there was just a post the other day. Mike Park keeps posting these TikToks of him replying to emails of people just sending him shitty emails, and he's replying to one, and someone in the New Jersey, there's a Facebook group called the New Jersey Pop Punk Scene.
Yeah, I've seen it.
So someone took a screenshot and said, can you notice anything that's cool in this? And I saw it, and I was like, is that an LWL sticker in the back? And he's like, yep. Apparently Steve, I guess, had sent him stickers or something way back in the day when they were LWL, and he kept the sticker and he put it on his wall, and he still has it on his wall in Asian Man.
I mean, I think I'm probably totally off base, but I feel like I remember like playing a show with LWL, and then we were at like an after party with those guys, and I feel like having we had a conversation with them, and they were like, "Hey, man, we're talking to Asian Man, and maybe they'll put out a record," and we were just like, "Oh shit, dude!" Like, I could be totally off base with that, but I feel like that conversation happened. But who knows? I'm 46 and old and stupid, so
I will say it's real.
Yeah, I wanted to be real because I felt like that was a band that just deserved so much more attention than they got anyway.
Yeah, we played a reunion with them in 2018. They played as Jettison, they played LWL songs. So Steve like put his glasses on and his backwards hat for like that whole set, and it was so fucking awesome. Yeah, he's been great too. He was like texting me a lot in the beginning of this because he was listening to a lot of episodes because he was super stoked. When you did Wilhelm Scream, because I was looking at Benefits of Thinking Out Loud, was that the first release when they went from Smack and Isaiah to Wilhelm Scream?
Yeah, definitely. So actually, it was originally released as Smack and Isaiah on Jumpstart. And then after the first pressing, the band decided to change their name. And so that's when we repressed it under the new name. Officially the first release with the new name. And then the second one would have been Mute Print. Actually, no, that's not true. Wait, I can't remember if the 4-song EP on Fork in Hand. I think the 4-song EP on Fork in Hand came out as a Wilhelm Scream too. I can't remember.
Well, I could do the discography right here.
It may have been Smack and Isaiah, and I can't remember if Steve from Fork in Hand repressed that with Wilhelm Scream. But then the first full on was Mute Print. Actually, Mute Print, I don't want to say it was supposed to come out on Jumpstart, but like that was our record. Nitro actually bought it from Jumpstart.
Really?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think I'm fairly certain that I'm allowed to tell that story. But yeah, I mean, we were the ones that sent we helped those guys go out to the blasting room to record with Bill Stevenson from the Descendants, and with the intention actually, like Nitro was already showing a lot of interest in the band, but they just weren't ready to sign them. Talking with the guys, I said, well, look, I'll put up the money. We'll get you guys out to the blasting room, and we'll see if Nitro likes it. And Nitro liked it, so Nitro bought it off of me.
Wow.
Which is great for the band, dude. I mean, I was super stoked, for them then, and I'm super stoked for them now because they're one of my favorite bands. But I'd be remiss not to think about how cool it would have been to release that record because I love that record.
Well, so here's kind of I don't really know how they should be taking this, but do you think if you were able to keep that record, do you think that you could have done as much for them as Nitro did?
Oh, definitely not, man. Like Nitro, at the time, had so much more money and so much more access than me. Maybe in time the band would be as big as they are now, but they wouldn't have gotten as relatively known as quickly as they did had they not worked with the label of Nitro's standing. So I'm super stoked that we were able to help them out with that, and that ultimately is what happened. And I mean, even out of that, like the Diver 7-inch that we did with them was actually technically 2 songs left over from that recording session with Bill at the blasting room. But Nitro had only bought the 10 songs for the record.
Oh wow.
These two extra songs were left over, so I own the rights to those songs technically. That's why the 7-inch, excuse me, the 7-inch was pressed.
Wait, which one's this? I'm
It's
looking on your site.
if you go up 1, 2, 3 rows from the Benefits of Thinking Out Loud record, you look at Diver. That's a Wilhelm scream. So that was only ever pressed on vinyl.
Okay.
The first pressing was blue with gray splattered color vinyl. The second pressing was 100 white and 400 clear. The picture that's actually on the website is of the test press, the second pressing test press.
So you only did 1,000 and you did 500 the second pressing, and then they all sold out?
That was done. That was done on purpose. We want to keep this limited. I've always, the band never wanted, not that they didn't like the songs, because they, occasionally they'll play them live, but they didn't want to ever put these records on, up for any digital service too. They wanted this to be purely just for this pressing, this record. So that's where it stands.
So did you find I'm always I mean, I can't really say I'm confused. It's like when a band their releases were getting on Napster or they leak, right? And there's two parts to this. One, if something is only released, let's say on vinyl, how is that then thrown up online without someone? It can't go on Spotify because Spotify is super airtight with getting releases on there if you're not like the band or the label.
Yeah.
So if you just is this available digitally though, even though you put it out on vinyl?
It's not. It's only available. I can't even remember. I don't think we even included a digital download with this. It was just the 7-inch. You could only buy the vinyl. I feel like that's super unique. You don't really hear of bands ever doing that anymore. We never put this up in a digital service. I mean, if you wanted to, share this, if there was like a mega upload website or file, you're on a BitTorrent or something like that. I'm certain there's probably someone that's like ripped this from an LP.
I'm on YouTube right now, and someone put the songs up on YouTube on their.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me, but that was certainly not us. So
yeah,
no, this record's never been available outside of that, that format officially anyway.
Yeah, I always think it's kind of because anytime I'm talking to a band and if I'm trying to find, I've talked to a bunch of bands and they're like, yeah, you can't find that record anywhere. If I go to YouTube, someone has this thing ripped and they put it up there. This guy.
Yeah, I mean, I could get it down in a heartbeat if I wanted to, but it's just not worth the time or effort, to be honest.
Did it bother you back in the day when things became digital and the digital download era started?
Maybe at first, just because from a label standpoint, you certainly saw people move away from buying records because it was just so easy to go online and find them. From that regard, I didn't like it, but I mean, when it came to access, it was great. I mean, it meant people could find music so easy. I mean, I kind of joke around about it now that you can go see a band and this was to a relative degree even true 10 years ago, not nearly. Yeah, 10 years ago, definitely. But 15 years ago, you could still go to a show, and we had better mobile phones, better smartphones back then. You could watch a band you'd never seen before and go to a website or go to iTunes or whatever, and you could download the record faster than you could even walk from the front of the stage to the band's merch table. So, I mean, there's, a lot of that I totally dig. I mean, the punk rock aesthetic of that to me is pretty cool. I feel like we're now finally getting away from the resurgence of vinyls showing this as well, but we're getting away from, to a certain respect, people not supporting bands and, only stealing them or only getting them from their friends. I mean, shit, it used to be so easy. If your friends had MP3s or something, hey man, rip me a CD of that. Boom, then you have it. I feel like we're finally getting away from that, which is great. For me, one aspect of the end, kind of going back to, I never expected to make any money off the label anyway. So it's never worried me, but it does suck, especially you see now the situation bands are in where they can't even play live.
Yeah.
If you weren't supporting them then, it sucks if you're not supporting them now, because maybe we'll get to a point and maybe COVID makes it worse where we just don't have bands doing as much because of that. Who knows? I mean, that's probably impossible because the access and the ability to make music and record music and post music is so much bigger, and so the availability of it's so much more than it used to be that it would be impossible for that to slow down.
Yeah. I mean, have you seen any? Because you said that this year you've packaged so many more records than you have or merch than you have in the last 10 years. I know that Bandcamp is it every Friday or every first Friday they do that all of the proceeds go to the bands?
It's not every first Friday, but there are select Fridays in a month. I think this year they're doing 4 or 6 of them.
Wow.
No, that's dope as shit, to be honest. Like I've done, like, for example, like the Off of Their Heads record, the live record, was purposely done on a Bandcamp Friday so that we could donate all of the proceeds that we got from the record to Act Blue charities, as well as that particular day for Bandcamp Friday, all of Bandcamp's fees were being donated to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. So that record was essentially put together in less than 2 weeks. I had the recording, and Eric from Creep Records had done like a rough mix on it, maybe like 6, 7, 8 months before that. I was so busy, he was so busy, we hadn't really talked about it or done anything about it. And then I saw on a previous Bandcamp Friday that Ryan and Off of Their Heads had put up a bunch of stuff for like purchase a download, and all the proceeds for that were going to Act Blue charities, their charity of choice. And, so I reached out to him and said, like, hey, man, there's another Bandcamp Friday coming up on June 19th. Would you be down with releasing a vinyl version of this live set that was recorded at the brewery? If you're into it, man, like, we'll take care of the mix, the master. We'll get the artwork done, and we'll get it all sorted out. I'll donate 100% of our profits to Act Blue as well. And I've known Ryan for some years now. He's totally cool about it, like the raddest guy ever. I fucking love the dude to death. Super into the idea. And like, we sold out of a pressing in 13 hours, 500 records in 13 hours. So we've donated over, at this point, between the Bandcamp fees that went to the NAACP Legal Defense Fund and our donations, we're almost at $6,000 donated just because of that one record. Yeah, stuff like is rad as shit. I don't do enough to promote the label releases on the other days, but the cool thing is people are paying attention to them, so I always see an uptick around those days. So I'm super happy for that stuff as well.
I think it's cool that bands will do that and they'll donate proceeds. I think it's cool in general if an entity, be it a band or whatever, donates things. I sometimes think it's kind of a dick thing for people to expect a band who already doesn't make any money to give their shit away, where it's like the only time they can make a decent amount, especially if they're still doing it full time. Where I'll see people do comments if someone puts something up. I saw some asshole do this past year. They were like, I think that you should be donating this to blah blah blah, and I'm like, get fucked. Like I was like, go, you stupid piece of shit. These guys are struggling to get by, and you're fucking shaming them for actually keeping fucking money when you're probably listening to Spotify, you fucking asshole. It just drives me nuts. Like, I think it's cool when someone decides to do that, but when like they're not doing that and then people come out of the woodwork and start giving them shit about it, where this asshole probably has this 9 to 5 fucking salary job that just drives me fucking crazy.
I mean,
I just had to say it because it's like fuck people
you're totally
who
right.
it's like fuck anyone who's on this platform when they have a paycheck come to them every 2 weeks. Like, I've worked for myself for the last 16 years and I've had to produce a paycheck on my own. Like, every week I got to figure out how to do it. And I'm like, fuck you. I can't.
So the funny thing about that is that's a conversation I was actually having with Ryan from Off Their Heads, I want to say 3 weeks ago, which was that pressing of that record has been interesting in the sense it's the longest it's ever taken for me to get a record pressed. And I mean, I don't think it's any coincidence that's happened during COVID. So anything's possible in this world. But I try to be very transparent with anyone that buys records from me, and particularly through our email list, and this release in particular. I'll tell them, like, look, man, like, I'm one dude. At the most, there was only ever 2, 3 people, like one extra, another full-time person, and then another part-time person working for Jumpstart. So it's not like there's ever been on the label side a big staff to take care of this stuff. But like, now it's just me. And I sold out a pressing of 500 in 13 hours. And then the pressing plant got shut down because it's in Philadelphia and there was a lockdown. So there was that. Then there's this problem. This record's been a headache in that regard. And the majority of the people, the silent, I hate the term silent majority, but they get it. Well, you send out an email and say like, hey man, this is what's going on. I'm sorry this is taking so long, but we're doing the best we can. This is a charity record. Thank you for your support. And then when I got the records, I even said to everyone, like, look, man, like, this is not my full-time gig. Jumpstart does not pay the bills. I have a full-time job. I'm a father of 2. Every minute I can dedicate to doing stuff for the label, I do. And some days that might be 10 minutes, and some days that might be 2 hours, and some days that might be nothing, because my job can be pretty physically straining sometimes, because making beer
Yeah.
and making liquor.
You're on your feet the whole fucking time, man.
Yeah, you're on your feet. You're throwing around 50-pound bags of malt all day. You're doing this, you're doing that. Like, it can get tiring. So there's days when I get home and I eat dinner and I get my kids to bed, and then like I don't want to go downstairs and package 100 records, because I know that I'm not going to get through 100 records. It's going to take me 5 hours to do that, even if I were doing it full time. So I'm always super transparent with people. Like, hey, stick with me. I'm a one-person operation. This isn't a full-time thing. I'm not Epitaph. I'm not these big labels. You're going to get your record. And guess what? This is a charity record. I mean, I even had one dude that got all pissy with me on email. I mean, like, hey, dude, when am I going to get your record? I was like, dude, I have 150 records of the ship. You're going to get your record soon. You'll get an email notice from the U.S. Postal Service as well as Bandcamp when it ships. I'm doing my best. And his response was, yeah, dude, whatever. I'm over it. I want a refund. And I just responded, I wasn't shitty, in a response. I just responded saying, yeah, man, no problem. Nothing like asking for a refund for a charity, on a charity record. And, his response got super fucking pissy and shitty about it too.
Yeah.
And so I started, I actually sent the email, forwarded it to Ryan, and he's like, yeah, dude, this sucks. I'm sorry. I didn't have to remind him, but we reminded each other. These are 1 out of 100, 1 out of 1,000. The vast majority of people are always like, yo, man, thanks so much for doing this. You rule. The band rules. I love that you did this. Don't worry about it. Like, I'm just stoked to get the record. I'm stoked you're doing this shit. I'm stoked you're still doing this shit. For every person out there that is this armchair, warrior and talks smack from the comfort of their keyboard, I don't care, man. Like, the things I care about is, like, I care about the bands I work with and trying to do whatever I can to do right by them. And sometimes I'm not very good at that, because I'm not a full-time operation. Because at the end of the day, I want to be good at that, but I also want to be a better father. If any of the people saw how much time and effort I put into things, maybe they'd give a shit more. But like, I'm not worried about that. I'm more worried about playing Uno with my daughter,
Yeah.
Because that's our thing right now. Spending time with her playing Uno or helping her with homework when I can is like, that's more important to me than someone shouting me down because they didn't get a record, in a timely manner. Whereas the majority of the time I get records to people really, really quickly.
Like I said in the beginning of this, where for me, having this comic thing that I'm doing where I'm ordering things here and I'm shipping out, even if it's as simple as a sticker, or sometimes it's like you have to keep track of that. And I mean, this past week I sent out like 5 things, but there's a process. You have to you have to write down on the envelope or package like who it's going to, and then put your like address on there, and then make sure you have the right thing in there, and then send it out. Like, it's a lot of steps, and it's like there's a balance where someone could say, yeah, well, you decide to have a record label and you took that responsibility on. It's like, sure. But at the same time, it's kind of like, hey, man, like, you're right. I don't have a staff. I don't have fucking interns who their one job is just packaging shit. There's
and I mean,
there's a lot that goes into
I
it.
tell people that. I tell people, like, look, man, like, I'm not Epitaph Records. I'm just a fucking married, middle-aged dude that likes putting out records. Been lucky enough to work with some awesome bands, and to be honest, I'm really good at some things, and there's other things about the label, especially since I've had kids, that I absolutely suck at. If I could spend 8 hours, across 2 days and ship 500 records, I would. But like, when I send out 6 updates about a record and why it's delayed and what's going to take for me to get this done, 60% of the people actually open the email, and then the other 40% ignore it, and then they're the ones sending you an email. It's just like, I used to get like super demoralized about it, and it could really even like people would get under my skin. Now I'm just like, I don't give a fuck. You didn't read the emails I sent out. Like, you literally, no, dude, I didn't get it. I was like, oh yeah, okay, I know you didn't get it. I've only sent out 6. Did you check your spam folder? No, I didn't check my spam folder. Oh, okay, it's in my spam folder. It's like, dude, like, I'm doing everything I can.
Yeah, it's just give a little. I mean, I'll be honest. Like, I've definitely been guilty where I've had a product take its time and I get on full like, what the fuck, and then I realize it's like your instinct is you're gonna fire off, but then sometimes like, all right, I need to fucking relax because I had my blow up, but let me reassess this and stop being such a dick.
Oh, and so
It's
the
like,
cool thing about that email I'd gotten from that dude about the Off of Their Heads record, he emailed me like the day after that, or 2 days after that. I was like, hey man, I just wanted to apologize. Like, I was super, that was super immature, of me, and like, I'm an adult. I shouldn't talk to other people like that, and like everyone's going through some shitty times right now, and like I think what you're doing is awesome. Like he even like
That's cool.
he I in the past I would have probably totally tried to burn this guy's house down because I think he called my label like a shit stain, and I was just like, yeah, dude, whatever.
Jesus.
You don't know what I do, like
Yeah.
I don't. You don't know the things I've done. You don't know the shit I've dealt with. You don't know the things I've fucked up. You don't know the things that I've done well. Like you haven't walked a mile in my shoes. And it's easy to be that keyboard warrior. But at the end of the day, there's for every one of those dudes, there's 99 other people that do give a shit about, if they're not telling you, they do give a shit. And if they are, they will. They'll email you and say, like, most of the time when like, you get an email, someone asking like, hey man, just checking with my record. You tell them, if you respond to them, you say, hey man, like I've got 100 records left to ship. Yours will come up soon. I'm working on it. Boom. They're always like 99 times out of 100. They're like, that's cool, man. Thanks for getting back to me. That type of stuff. So
Did you ever actually work with a distro like Caroline, or I don't know? That's just like a name that
yeah,
popped up.
that's the majority of the people that owe me money that have ripped me off are all distributors. So I mean,
Oh, talk
at
about
one point,
that. I
yeah,
mean, again, this isn't about trying to dig up dirt and shit like that, but I'm just trying to give like a real perspective to people of what this is really like. And like, I've had a couple people say that in the past that they've gotten burned by certain distros, or even I had a talk to a guy recently. He had a band burn him after he recorded them, and he spent like they were supposed to pay like $4,000, and they just didn't pay it.
I mean, I've had bands burn me. I've had distributors burn me. I mean, I've had multiple distributors burn me. So like going all the way back to Rots Records out of Chicago in the late 90s, I got really lucky. They declared bankruptcy. Basically, when they announced it, or before I think I actually got to them right before they announced it, and before the bank seized all their assets to sell off. I'd heard through the grapevine that they were, about to, declare bankruptcy. So I emailed them because I remember being able to email them and just said like, hey guys, I know I'm never going to see the money that you owe me for the records you have sold, but can you just at least send me my stock back? Just send me the records that you have in stock so I don't lose those, because I could still sell those. It'd be great if I didn't lose all of it. And 3 days later, I had my records back.
Damn.
So that was like my first experience with a distributor going under. And in that particular case, they went into bankruptcy, and I never saw the money for the records they had, not all the records they had sold of mine, but a fair amount of them. Fast forward to the next shitty situation would have been a distributor out of Baltimore who part of their deal, a P&D deal, so a production and distribution deal. So they had the rights to press records of mine and then sell them. And they actually had a sub deal with Victory, which at the time I believe was distributed by Warner Brothers. So Victory had their hands in this as well. And then like part of their deal was they were supposed to get my permission. Like if a record was going to go out of press, they were supposed to get my permission before they repressed it. One common tactic of distributors like that to avoid paying labels thousands of dollars that they owe them is that they'll repress records, because then that jumps up their recoup. So then that's less money they have to pay. And since they're getting like cut rate deals from the pressing plants, but they're charging you slightly above that, they're saving money. So that was a pretty crappy situation. I had to sue that distributor to get any money back in my records and my rights back. And then after that, I signed on with Lumberjack, and Lumberjack went under and took
Man.
a fair amount of, I actually was, the majority of what Lumberjack took with them was digital. They owed me a boatload of money in digital. That I just didn't see. And then after that, Ashes of Lumberjack was independent label group, which was formed by a bunch of people that were from Lumberjack. I mean, this one was like, that one was, was rather unfortunate, where the main dude behind it, he was a good dude and he cared, but like he had a really bad drug addiction problem that eventually he OD'd. And, the distributorship went under and whatnot. And I believe he committed, he OD'd after that, but like everything was just a total mess. None of the labels were getting paid. Shit was just completely off the rails. But like, I lost out on that as well. I didn't get paid from them as well. So after that, I just said, screw this. I'm not selling through distributors anymore. I've only ever sold direct since.
Really? Damn.
Yeah.
That's such a, I mean, the distributors, you could see why, if they work, they're a benefit, because when you buy, their whole production is all day long, they're sending things out. So that's why things get to you. And
Yeah. Yeah.
and but you're also missing out on a piece of the pie because of that. But then there's this balance. So then when you bring it back in house, you're just like, shit, I could have sent all this
Well,
out.
the crazy thing about it too is like, for me, working with Lumberjack was, I don't want to say a dream to come true, but like, growing up, listen to like a lot of hardcore punk, the Lumberjack catalog was a big deal to me, as well as Mortem. So like at the time it was Lumberjack Mortem. So like to have a distributor with the portfolio of labels that it had underneath it
Yeah.
was awesome, because I love I love the labels and the bands that they were working with, and it gave me access, like all these record stores wanted to carry records from these other labels. Didn't mean that they want my records, but means there was a chance they may notice the weekly release of the releases that, hey, there's this record from Wilhelm Scream. Hey, there's this record from Jenner Berlin, that type of stuff. So it was huge. But then to have them like go belly up and then, take some money, money of mine with it. And then of course, access to all these stores was, it sucked, but I just basically said at that point, I was like, I don't care. I'm not doing this anymore. I lost more money to distributors than I'm ever going to sell in records anyway, again, in records. So it doesn't matter.
I remember the name Lumberjack. Like Lumberjack was kind of synonymous, or not synonymous, but it was one of those names from back then that was as big as, I don't know, like it's like that was the era where this was right before producers almost became bigger than the bands. Like when a record came out, it was like, oh, who produced it? And that mattered. So it's almost like if your record was out, it's like, oh, it's being distributed through Lumberjack. Kind of like one of those things where it kind of gave it some weight, or just kind of pushed you up
Oh
over maybe
yeah.
someone knew that.
When I was a senior in high school and a freshman and sophomore in college, I mean, like the two best places to buy records were from the Lumberjack catalog or the Very catalog. If you wanted a hardcore band, you wanted an emo band, these are the distros you want to do mail order with. They always had the dopest, the best records.
Did you hear this whole thing that's going on with like Interpunk? Did you have any issues with
Yeah,
them
I'm
ever?
a little involved in that actually.
So what is that? Was it like it was like drugs, or what or they like owe everybody money?
They owe fucking everyone money, myself included. That would actually be like a minor repeat of the whole distributor situation. Not nearly as much money as like Lumberjack and independent label group and or independent label collective. Like not as much money as these guys walked away on me. But I mean, I stopped sending records to Interpunk because of the amount of money they owed me. I want to say 5-6 years ago. They just weren't paying. They'd sell the records. I'd see them sell the records, but then they wouldn't. I'd request a check and they weren't sending me my money. So I just stopped sending them records. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's any situation where this dude just pissed away money on drugs or whatnot. I think it has more to do with, I think the dude just got too far in over his head. His expenses were too high. They weren't selling enough records to cover all their expenses, be that rent, be that payroll, be that whatever else it was. I mean, I could be off base of this. Maybe he did piss it all away, but I mean, pretty much anyone that sent him records, he has not paid. I mean, like I occasionally will send him an email. I don't think I've sent him an email in like a year and a half though, just because at this point I know everyone else is in the same boat as me and I'm never going to see the money. But yeah, I mean, I can't believe the dude still has balls to have a website up and still is taking records from, the major distributors and selling them on his website, because every other small band or label, he's just completely pissed on them and not paying them for records.
Yeah, I'm on the site right now. It's still up, 10%
Yeah, I
on
mean,
small. What a dick.
Yeah, I mean, he's still putting up like, current or new releases. I
What?
can't believe anyone would actually sell to him, let alone anyone would buy from him. So
Wow. Yeah, I mean, even Deftones are on here. Like, even if you have a giant band, or the Blink 182 Buddha 7-inch or vinyl, yeah,
yeah,
it's
because
on
he's
here.
just going to make, he's going to like Red Distribution or Warner, and getting records that are available through those distributors, and he's selling them, because as long as he keeps a good, business relationship with them, he's going to be able to, he keeps his account current. He's going to be able to continue to get records from them. But that doesn't matter whether he owns this little crappy label from, outside of Philadelphia, $1,000 or not. He's just going to say, fuck it, I'm going to do that. He's definitely getting like this No Effects record. He's not buying that from Fat Wreck Direct. He's getting it from Fat Wreck's distributor. So there's no disconnect. What really needs to happen is labels like Fat Wreck and an Epitaph need to come in and tell the distributor, don't sell this dickhead any more records until he fucking pays the people that he owes money.
Wow. That's so fucking crazy. It's so weird, just like, having a podcast about this error this late '90s era, which is just it's a bit of a positive thing. There's just like some shady shit that's like gone down behind the scenes. I mean, we get business involved. It's like you're gonna have
It's
assholes.
just the nature of music, whether you're talking about major, punk's, part of punk's whole thing was just fuck major labels till they bleed. But the reality is it doesn't make a difference whether you're a major label or not, man. Fucking small labels and bands for that, man. I mean, I had, like I was saying earlier, like I had a band that had a van actually. So Warped Tour in 2003, I specifically bought a van just for the tour. I went out and bought a used 1990 Dodge Ram, like 250 conversion van just for the tour. I didn't pay a boatload of money. I think I paid like 2,500 for it. It was perfect. It lasted the whole summer. It was great. And then afterwards, I signed this band out of Pittsburgh. I won't give you their name, but they were going on tour and they needed a van. I said, well, look, take my van. And if you guys want, you can buy it from me because I don't need it anymore. I just got done Warped Tour and I was going to sell it anyway. So take the van and then you guys will figure out, a payment plan for when you guys get back from tour. I'm not overly concerned about it. It's 2,500. Not that 2,500 is a small amount of money, but like, I figured if they paid me $200 a month for a year and a half, or a year rather, they'd pay it off. And so they go on tour, and then they fucking didn't take care of the van at all, didn't check the oil, didn't do any of that shit, and they blew the motor in it. And then, like typical band dudes that just are fucking shitty, left the fucking van in a parking lot, a Holiday Inn parking lot in Cranberry Township, Pennsylvania, out by Aliquippa, north of Pittsburgh, and they left it there and didn't do shit for it at all. They just left it there. I actually ended up having to go out and get the van, had to pay to get it towed, do all this other shit. Like they totally fucked me over. Guys dropped off the face of the earth, didn't hear from any of them, that type of shit. And even to this day, like I've seen a few of the dudes like on Facebook and whatnot, but like it's not like anyone's ever been like, hey dude, remember that time, you gave us a van and we said we are going to buy it and then we fucking destroyed it and left it in some shitty Holiday Inn parking lot in near Aliquippa, Pennsylvania. Nothing, none of that shit. And I mean, like, yeah, I'm not dwelling on it at all. I mean, dude, I'm well past it, but it's the same shit, man. And, it can happen in either direction. And dude, I'm not without fault too, man. Like, not that I've ever intentionally fucked over a band, but like I haven't done right by bands. I'd like to think that I'm always the first person to be like, yo, dude, sorry. Like I fucked up. That's my fault. I've never tried to steer away from that. Like if anything, and I'm not using this as a crutch, but like I just been kind of involved in other shit that like for right or wrong, like really a lot of like the label has taken a back seat the last 10 years to the brewery shit because the brewery stuff went in a direction where, I always wanted it to be successful and grow, but I never thought it was going to do what it did in the time that it did. It went from, like I said, three guys running a brewery to like 80 plus employees in two locations. Like my responsibility, I just had this weight on me that like I had to do my job for the brewery because if I didn't do that, then there was 80 employees who didn't get paid. And a lot of these people had families and we also provided healthcare benefits to our full-time employees. So like, if I weren't doing my job, then these people and their family and their kids may not have healthcare. So it's not that I didn't give a shit about the bands or the labels. I haven't done a good job of that in the last, like, in particular, like the last 5-6 years. And I'll be the first person. I've apologized for it profusely, but that doesn't change that, like, the fact that the shit has gotten crazy. I mean, and it's, COVID hasn't helped that. I mean, I'm not looking for a sob story, but like 2020, COVID wise for me was like, fucking horrible. Like right before COVID hit, I had an appendectomy. So I was in the hospital for that. Then my wife got COVID and was in the hospital. Like I'm not looking for fucking, any sort of, any sympathy, but it's just like, dude, the world's bigger than a punk rock label that's never paid the bills in the first place.
Have you ever thought at any point to just turn the switch off, stick with what you got in house, and just get rid of that stuff, not as a fire sale, but just as is, and then just keep everything digital moving forward, just so it kind of relieves that stress?
Yeah, I have. I mean, the one thing I jokingly is I have one of those big like 5-gallon like Deer Park water cooler water jugs, and I started putting coins into it. I want to say 10 years ago, and I said when that thing's full, I'm gonna use the money that's in that, and that will be the last record. Like I'm gonna take all the coins in that, and that will go towards the last pressing of the last record of Jumpstart. And right now it's about halfway full. I probably could have filled it by now, just because it's in my basement next to my desk in the label office, so to speak. But yeah, maybe I should do that. I mean, this year I want to get through this year being the 25th anniversary. And like, I've had a couple of releases like the Attic Salt record that just came out. I'm like super stoked on. And the Mind Power record that just came out. And those were records that have come out in the last 6 months that should have come out earlier because of one reason or another, COVID being one of them. In the next 2 months, 3 months, I'm going to announce like the 25th anniversary stuff that I'm going to do. But I want a clean shop with a bunch of label stuff, get some stuff to bands that I've been telling them I'm going to get them for a while. And then maybe after this year, I don't know. We'll see. I mean, I'm going to be spending the next 24 months traveling to and from Germany. So I'll have periods of time that, certainly make it easy for me to do things for the label. But then I'll also have 3 to 5 week periods of time where I can certainly answer email, but like I don't have anyone at home doing mail order for me right now, that type of stuff.
We were talking about artwork in the very beginning compared to, as you see it progress, like the art, I don't know if this has anything to do with it, but the artwork that you guys have on these records is fucking really good.
So a lot of it does have a lot to do with me, but it also has to do with a bunch of designers and illustrators I've been working with. So for example, like the Mind Power record that just came out, like I didn't do the photography, but I did the layout and everything for that. So like if you look at the pictures of the record that are under the release, like you'll see it's a full gatefold and like the whole layout and shit is pretty dope, real well. I'm like super stoked on that. But, like, so I do handle a lot of the graphic design. Like I did the layout for the Off of Their Heads record, but JP Flexner did the artwork. He also did the artwork for the Attic Salt record. I did the layout for the All Eyes West record. Guys from Vandal had a buddy of theirs do their record. So it's a mixed bag in there. I do a fair amount of stuff. I really do work a lot with my buddy JP. John Loudon from Jenner Berlin / Jesus, why am I forgetting the name of his most current band? It's gonna kill me. I can see the logo too. Jesus, but I've had a bunch of people help me out with artwork over time. So it's been a mixed bag. Some me, some other people.
Who's your Kill Lincoln designer?
The artist for the Good Riddance to Good Advice.
Yeah.
I want to say there's out of Virginia, DC area, and then I think Mike, their singer guitar player, might have done the artwork for the LP before that.
Okay, because like the Good Riddance to Good Advice, that's great. Especially, I'm always looking for designers because of the animations I do. So if someone does cool character design, I always pay attention to it.
Like JP Flexner did a lot of the artwork. Like he did the Plow United artwork. He did the Broadcaster A Million Hours artwork. He did the Swamp Punk artwork.
Yeah, the Plow United artwork is super cool. I love that. Marshman.
Sergi from Sam I Am did the artwork for the All Eyes West Doomer LP.
I talked to Sergi at like episode 33. It was in the 30s, and I had no clue. And I've said this a couple times. I had no idea how many albums he's been involved with. Like he even to this day, like he still does it, and he was part of Lawrence Arms, Oh Calcutta, like he designed in that. But if you go back in the day, he did like Lagwagon and fuck, man, I don't know, like
he's done
a
ton.
Bands. Yeah, like a shit ton of bands.
Yeah, he's good friends with Jeff from All Eyes West, Jeff Dean from All Eyes West. He's also in he was in the Bomb. He's in what's the other band? Why am I like flaking out?
Who, Sergi, his newest band?
Well, no, Jeff from All Eyes West is really good friends with Sergi from Sam I Am. That's how that like happened,
right?
And whatnot.
Yeah, that's a cool. The All Eyes West is really cool design. Yeah, that guy's fucking really good. How so Siren 6 stood out to me too because the very first real punk show I ever played was they were on the bill. And they've come up a couple times. There was someone I talked to recently where we were talking about how the band I was talking with, they were on tour and they were like, it was so hot and we were like sweating our balls off. He's like, but we were with the Siren 6 and there they are, just like all decked out in their black like black get up, black jeans that just never broke brand, and that was just always their thing. Like they just stayed strong to it. But you have 2 releases by them.
Yeah, so the 2 records they did, this is everything. I believe it's everything that they ever recorded or released because there was even some compilation stuff that was added to the Young and Professional EP that was on the vinyl LP. No, I mean I just reached out to the guys. I was a huge fan of the band. I mean, especially the Voice with the Built-in Promise. Like when that record came out to me, it was like, I don't want to say the second coming of the Specials, but it had such a two-tone vibe. But like, and then it had like this Elvis Costello new wave punk thing going to it too that I absolutely fucking loved. And so I had reached out to them, and they, ironically enough, at the time I had reached out to them, they were talking about doing a reunion show. That's how we ended up working out getting the vinyl done in time for them, and the record to be released in time for the reunion shows. There's those records actually came out on a label called Kingpin, and there's another band on that label that I absolutely love that I'm trying to work on a vinyl version of a record that came out on Kingpin that has never existed, which is Animal Chin. All the Kids Agree. I've been communicating with Jamie Wolford for a while about trying to get that on some vinyl. There's interest, but Jamie's such a busy dude with music, whether it's recording and producing bands, doing stuff for movies. Like Jamie's like a super, super busy guy. So it's been on the back burner for him for a while, but I keep on trying to convince him. Every 6 or 7, 8 months, I send him an email like, hey, dude, just drop it in. And he's like, yeah, dude, I'm still into the idea, but I'm still, super busy. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. Just remember, there's definitely people that want this.
Yeah, I talked to him and Rory for episode 99, and it was a super cool conversation because they were just having an open, real conversation about how the two of them split back in the day and how they're cool with each other now. But they were saying that they have this new stereo record that he's like, I am so fucking busy he's got like 4 kids or something like that too, and between that and producing records and recording, and Jamie, and then so Rory was just like, yeah, I'm just still kind of like pushing them to do this, and then the two of them recorded their own podcast where they really dive into their relationship in the band from back in the day. So that's going to come out the same time as the stereo record, apparently.
Nice.
Yeah, so I mean, it sounds like he's got so much shit on his plate. But so you would put out Animal Chin on vinyl?
Hopefully. I mean, I'm not saying it's gonna 100% happen.
That would sell the fuck out so fast.
I mean, that record in particular, like for me, was like, I remember I was able to book them once for a show, on campus at Penn State, and like, I just the band is one of my favorites, and especially from that whole ska punk, skate punk era. Like to me, especially with the band name Animal Chin, it was like, fuck, man, this band is so good. Apparently, Jamie's remixed it, and he's gonna remaster it, and I'm just like, dude, all you gotta do is drop it on me, and I'll have it. I'll have a record in your hands in 4 months.
Wow, that'd be crazy. I think that would literally fly off the shelf.
That's been like kind of like on deck for a while, so to speak. I wouldn't, if that record never happened or never happened on Jumpstart, I wouldn't be surprised. But like, it could happen. And then a few of the other holes, like Jumpstart JST-028 was supposed to be a vinyl version of Dynamite Boys Somewhere in America. I've been communicating with the band, and they're totally down to make it happen. But the problem is that the rights to that record is still owned by Fearless, but Fearless actually doesn't even own the rights to it anymore because they've sold the rights to, what is the name? It's the same label that bought Victory Records in the Nitro catalog. Let me see if I can look it up real quick. Oh, it's Craft Recordings. Craft Recordings owns the rights to that. And I've emailed them. I've even been given the direct contact of the dude that's in charge of that. And the dude never has gotten back to me. And it's like, come on, man. Like, I know you own the rights to this, but you're never going to do shit with it. The funny thing is like, I have everything. I have the entire record. I have 2 unreleased tracks that the band had given me for it. And I have all the artwork. I literally just need the Craft to say, yeah, man, do it. We don't give a shit because we're never going to do anything with it anyway. And I'll press it and I'll fucking love it because for the life of me, I can't remember why it never went to press in the first place. But there's that type of shit that I just want to see come out that like didn't come out. There was one release back in the day where the band, like the singer committed suicide. So that's why we never put it out. There's small little holes and gaps in the numbers because of stupid shit like that. There's 2 numbers that like I have no idea what they were, what they may have been. I can't remember for the life of me. So
Craft Records, Craft Recording, what are they called?
Craft Recordings.
Craft Recording. So if anyone's listening, it's a shot in the dark. If you happen to know this person, or if you are this person, you should totally give Jeremy the rights. The end.
Give me an email. If you're not gonna, or just tell me you're gonna put out the record on Craft. That'd be fine. And then tell the band that because I'm sure the band would be super stoked on it too.
Yeah, jumpstartrecordings@gmail.com, and that's for Dynamite Boy, right?
Yeah, but that's like the one record I've been working so hard to try to make happen this year. And by working so hard, at least, I did reach out to Fearless and they got back to me really quickly. And they're like, yeah, man, we don't have anything, any control of that anymore. Craft owns it. You got to talk to them. And they CC'd the dude from Craft on the email. And then the dude Never responded. I've emailed him twice since, and he hasn't got back to me. So, if I had a phone number, I'd give him a call, but I don't. So, I
Ah, man. Well,
wonder
hopefully,
if there's a phone website.
there's always a way to find a phone number. There is like Hunter IO. If you find them on LinkedIn, you could probably find it that way. And there's just all these like random wraparounds, or like Instagram probably has like some information. Well, cool, dude. Well, I gotta wrap this up, so I'm gonna end this with two questions. And all right, first one is, what would you like to plug?
Oh man, I
I know
need to
it
think
sounds like
about
you
it
got a
like that.
lot.
I mean, super stoked on the last couple records that we've put out. Of course, the new Mind Power Self Tortured record, which is Bob Meadows from A Life Once Lost, one of his new projects. So if you're into like super heavy, groove heavy, hardcore and metal, check that out. If you're really into Midwest punk, a la like Dear Landlord meets The Replacements meets, I don't know, man, like Hospital Job, which would make sense anyway. Super check out the Attic Salt record. I'm like in love with that record. It's so catchy. And then of course my boy Jeff Dean and Justin and Ronnie from All Eyes West, their last record, Like Lightning. This year we got some pretty rad shit coming out. I can't say yet what all of it is, but there's a lot of records in process right now. If you're into like late 90s, early 2000s ska punk, especially on Kingpin Records, another record that was on Kingpin's that is not Animal Chin, then there's a good chance you're going to like one of the records. And then some new stuff. We have some new stuff coming from a band out of Philly called Time. And then a new record from U Vandal coming out this year as well. So I'm pretty pumped on that stuff. All super rad guys. I mean, to be honest, like any band that's ever worked with me, anyone that's ever, supported the label, I can't thank them more than enough because, 25 years later, I'm still doing this shit for better, for worse. But, I wouldn't have gotten to 100 plus releases in 25 years without anyone actually paying attention to this label whatsoever. So
Cool, man. Well, last question then. What scene ethics do you hold on to this day?
scene ethics. I don't know if it's an ethic as much as I mean, it's certainly an ethic or it's an ethos. Maybe, I guess that's the same thing. An ethos and ethic are basically the same thing, I guess, would be, I mean, it's just the whole do it yourself thing. For me, for better or for worse, it's like, you don't know how to do it, you figure it out. If it hasn't been done, you figure it out. Like to me, that's been such a defining aspect of my life, whether it's the label, whether it's my career, and what I've done in brewing and everywhere that's gotten me, like everything, I've done in this world, in this life, besides my kids, has to do with music. What I've done playing in bands, what I've done running a record label and putting out records, everything, even, what I do in beer is directly related to, and getting involved in beer was directly related to being in a band and being on tour. So I owe everything to it. And it's because of, that mentality, like that idea. As punk kids, you had to figure it out. No one was going to, not necessarily going to show it to us. We had to figure it out, or we had friends that would help us. But, there was no rule book. There was no guide. We had to make it up as we go, or we had friends that knew how to do it and show us the way. And to me, I've always appreciated that aspect of it. And I've always really tried to return that. You see it, unfortunately, more so on the brewing side these days because I'm not nearly as active in, records as I was. But like anytime anyone ever asked me questions, whether it's music, like I was talking to my buddy Joe from Hell Minded Records in the punk rock flea market, the Trenton Punk Rock Flea Market was texting me yesterday. He'll ask me questions. I'll ask him questions. There's, that aspect of punk rock and music, independent music, as well as the independent craft beer industry and scene. It's the same thing, man. Like everyone gives a shit about each other. Generally speaking, everyone cares about each other and everyone's high tide floats all boats. We're all in this together. And if you haven't done it, someone else probably knows how to do it or has done it. And if they haven't, then fuck it, do it yourself. You'll figure it out. And that's really what I've gotten out of music the most. And then, I guess what would be equally important to me is like really the friendships that I've made. We were talking about Adam from the Overdrives earlier. Like it's transcended even music. I've been lucky enough at the start of the brewery, man. There was so many people that worked at the brewery that were either in bands that I had released records with or bands I was friends with. There was like two common themes of employees at Neshaminy Creek Brewing at the beginning is one, they either went to Penn State, or two, they were in bands that either I had released records with or were in bands that like I played shows with or friends with. It was just a lot of, it wasn't coincidental at all. It was, I wouldn't say it was planned, but, a lot of it, was there was so many similarities between the two that it made sense that, hey, of course I'm going to have Jeff from Restitution, not Restitution, Jenner Berlin. Why am I fucking forgetting this other man's name? He was, of course, he's booking bands at Boot and Saddle. He was booking, Jenner Berlin and whatnot. Like, of course, it makes sense for him to be our event coordinator. He's already doing that, so why not do it for the brewery type shit? Kevin, Kevin from Aspiga, and also used to deal with all the mail order and everything for the label. Like, he's a logistics manager at the brewery. I don't want to say he got the job because of the label, but I knew Kevin, I knew what he could do, and I knew how talented he was, and it made sense. Hey, let's have these people. I mean, now the brewery's grown so much that like the percentage of people that were somehow affiliated with the record label or Penn State is certainly not even close to a majority of these days. But like there's that legacy there, and I think that's super, super important. Without all those things, without music and without the label, none of that, I wouldn't have anything. I wouldn't have the friends. I wouldn't have the career that I have, and I'm super appreciative of all that.